Welcome to Calbeckistan, the place where anybody can learn math. My name is Mr. Calbeck, and this is the first episode in our crash course on factoring. So if you need to learn factoring as fast as possible, this is the video for you. Our crash course series is not going to go real deep onto why things are the way they are. My goal is just to teach you exactly what you need to know to pass the test and nothing more. So if that's you, this is the place to start. I am going to continue to put videos out on this series all the way up through calculus. So if you need some additional, more advanced factoring skills, you can check some of the later videos in the series. So let's jump in here. The whole point of factoring is we want to try to turn this into this. And I'm going to teach you how. Factoring, before we get too far, what factoring actually means is it's the opposite of multiplication. So if you were to take this problem right here, if I were to ignore this, and I were to give you this problem and ask you to multiply it, what you probably do, many teachers teach FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. I teach double distribution because what you're doing is you're taking this and distributing it into everything in the second term. You're multiplying it. And you're going to do it twice, hence double distribution. So x times x gives you x squared. X times 2 gives you 2x. 3 times x, again, we're going to distribute twice. So 3 times x gives you 3x. 3 times 2 gives you 6. We can combine like terms, and you'll see these are exact opposites of each other. Really important to realize that. You've even done this as early as elementary school, where you first learned how to factor. In elementary school, you did something like this. You might have taken, you might have taken 15 and realized that 15 is actually made up of two numbers multiplied together, 5 times 3. If you were to find those two numbers, you would have factored 15. That's what we're doing here. It's the same idea. When you take something like this, this is your big number, like your 15. My goal here with factoring is to find the two numbers that give me this big, long expression. It's really just one number if you realize that x could be any number. If you plugged a 2 in, you could figure out one number for this. So what we're looking at here, again, this is our 15. We're trying to find the two numbers that multiply to make it. Again, number 1, number 2, just like the 5 and 3. The way that most teachers are going to teach this is they're going to show you the pattern that connects these two. And here's essentially all it is. What we're looking at here, these two numbers have a relationship between these two numbers. You see here, 3 plus 2 gives you 5. That's not a coincidence. That's very purposeful. And 3 times 2 gives you 6. So what we're looking for here, essentially, are two numbers that multiply together to be this last number. And they add together to be the middle number. If you can find those two numbers, they're going to go right in here. And this first number in each parenthesis is going to be x. At least until we get into more challenging ones, which you'll see in the next video. So let's try an example. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to be 16 and add to be 10. Let's see if we can figure that out. When I do these problems, I like to even make a little chart over here. I have 16, and they multiply to be 10. All right, let's see what you got here. Hopefully you've already figured this out. There's a couple of options. I'll show you all the possibilities here. I can have 1 and 16 or 2 and 8. Hopefully you see that the 2 and the 8 are going to add to be 10. Those are my two factors. The cool thing about factoring is you can always check your work. Please check your work on your tests. So few of my students ever do this, even though it's like having a cheat code on your test. If you want to know if you factored right, multiply these back together, again using FOIL or double distribution. Multiply it out. If it gives you what you started with, that means you factored correctly, because factoring this is the opposite of multiplying it, so you can check your work that way. All right, let's try another one. I'm going to throw some negatives in here. All right, so here's another possibility that you could see. Notice everything's negative in this except for the x squared, so be careful of that. But we're still going to do that same pattern. we're going to be looking for two numbers that multiply, again, multiply to give you negative 14, and add to be negative 5. So we'll make our chart over here, negative 14. We're going to find the numbers that multiply to be negative 5, and you can come up with all the possibilities. There's a problem here, because negative 14, since it's negative, that means one of these has to be positive and one has to be negative, because a positive times a negative is a negative. So you're going to have to come up with both possibilities for each one. I could have 1 and negative 14, or I could have negative 1 and positive 14. You need to check both possibilities. The other one is 2 and 7. 2 could be negative, or the 7 could be negative. The only one that will add to be negative 5 is 2 and negative 7. Be careful about your negatives. They're going to be a really easy way to get tripped up. So we're going to have x plus 2 and x minus 7. Again, check your work by multiplying. All right, there's one other possibility we're going to take a look at. Notice here, the middle is negative and the end is positive. So that means when we look at our little chart here, it has to multiply again to be 20, but adds to be a negative. So if you have two numbers that add to be a negative but multiply to be a positive, that tells you something really important about those two numbers. It tells you they both have to be negative. And I would encourage you, as you're finding these multiples, to put both negatives here so you remember that at the beginning. So you could have 1 and negative 20. You could also have negative 2 and negative 10, or negative 4 and negative 5. These are the possibilities. Negative 4, negative 5, add to be negative 9, which is going to give you your answer. And there you go. That's it for our first episode and crash course on factoring. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see anything else on this series.